Welcome back, everyone. Gosh, what a shocking series of events. The woman in question is Kathleen Folbig, and her series of traumatic events began back in 1999 with the death of her first child. It was a sudden death for apparently no reason, no marks on the body, no clear explanation why the child died. She went on to have 3 more children, all of which suffered the same fate, a death for apparently no reason. Her diaries, she was obviously going through a lot of trauma. She was writing about what she was going through and feeling awful, the tragedy of it all, the unfairness, blaming herself. And those diaries were used against her in court to try and prove that she had killed her children. Her husband also went on to testify against her in court, saying he believed, even though he had not seen anything, he believed she had killed the children. So she was sent to prison for murdering her 4 children. But as time has passed, further scientific research has been done into SIDS, also known as cot death, and they've been able to identify certain genes which can cause this sort of spontaneous death at a very young age. Her children's bodies were tested for these genes, and every single one of them had it. So she was then able to go back to court and prove that all the children had died of sudden infant death syndrome, and she was not, in fact, a murderer. So finally, she was released from prison, and justice hopefully finally was served. But, you know, it feels a bit like the damage is already done. She has gone through so much over so many years.
20 years.
How can she
in jail, but of course years before that, I guess, too.
Plus all the deaths before that, yes, and the trauma. And having your own husband accuse you, even though he didn't actually see anything or really know anything, that sounds pretty tragic. So, a truly horrifying case.
Reading this made me angry.
Yeah. And so I think that the question that we're being asked here, I think it comes from perhaps the husband's perspective. He seemed to think, for some reason, that his wife was a murderer. He obviously thought that for some reason she didn't like the children or was just a bad mother. But this may come from his own stereotypes. What are some stereotypes or widely held beliefs about mothers?
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit it with the husband. I think a lot of people think the mother, or wives and mothers, should be the nurturer, the caregiver, and they're responsible for the family, the babies, like children of the family, and keeping the house clean, etc. And because of that, when those things don't go right or well, then suddenly they are bad mothers or bad people for all of that. I think other stereotypes, it depends on the country. There might be stereotypes where people are too focused on their children or sacrificing a lot, or expected to sacrifice a lot. There might be stereotypes where, mothers are seen as kind of the, like in America, like no intimate relationship with their husband, just focusing on their kids, gossiping. These are all negative things that can easily be stereotypes in different countries. Yeah, a lot of negative, but there's positive stereotypes too. I don't think that's what the question is asking, though.
Yes. Yeah. Considering this case. So another surprising thing about this article was the fact that initially she was convicted of murdering the children, even though there was no evidence of her harming the kids. It was just people's opinions of whether or not she might do something like this. What's your reaction to that, John?
Well, I think you saw it on the screen. My reaction is obviously negative in this way. It's impardonable to actually convict someone when you don't have evidence. It just shouldn't happen. Even nowadays, they're finding out that eyewitness testimonies are not considered that accurate anymore. They're like, people don't remember that well. Like if you see it and the next day you talk about it, maybe it's mostly accurate. But a year and a half later in trial, you're not gonna remember the details. And so they're finding out that these sort of things that we've relied on are not that great. And so, yeah, the more hard evidence, and by hard evidence, I mean the evidence we consider to be more weighty in truth, the more you have, the better. And this case had nothing, literally nothing, except the word of people. And it wasn't the eyewitness word of people. It was just, oh, I think she did it. I don't really like her. Well, 4 kids can't die in a row, right? I don't know. Yeah.
I guess they can. And I suppose the only positive to come out of this case is that finally we do have genetic testing for kids that are likely to suffer sudden infant death syndrome. So maybe we can predict it and take special care or extra protection for them.
Yeah, hopefully someday.
Let's try and stay positive. Let's check out the vocabulary, and we'll see you in the next article.
Interminable.
Interminable.
Rack.
Rack.
Improbable.
Improbable.
Variant.
Variant.
Ordeal.
Ordeal.